think Ramadan is a time where a lot of people, right, or Muslims, they will fast during the day, and during the night they would break fast, right? And since a lot of us are eating maybe one meal a day, what we tend to do is we tend to want to eat with family members, right? And since like myself, I live in a city, so sometimes between traffic, between work, and between commitments, right, that leaves not much of time for cooking, right? And this is where the Bazaar Ramadan comes into play, right? So every once a year also, the Bazaar Ramadan is basically, if you guys can imagine this with me, right, it's a street, right, where they have a lot of small little temporary stalls, right? And these stalls will sell all sorts of things, from rice, from noodles, from kueh, from drinks, and it's such a wonderful time of year lah, basically, especially if you're a foodie like myself lah. I'm a foodie. I like to makan, so, or I like to eat. So I love to go to different bazaar Ramadans, and I like to see how creative the sellers are, right? So that said, right, uh, I'd like to share with you some interesting data about this particular month, right? And this was a survey done not too long ago, which stated that they have surveyed a couple of Malaysians, and they found out like almost 80% of Malaysians they surveyed, right, are expected to spend a fair bit more during this particular month, right? And amongst the top few things that they're going to spend on are things like food and also fashion, right? And rightfully so, lah. During the month of Ramadan, like I said, a lot of people, some people, especially working in the city, they may be a bit busy, right? And they have a lot of commitments. And on top of that, in Kuala Lumpur, lah, around 4:30, or around PJ, or around Selangor also, around 4:30 is where a lot of people leave their office. And this is a mad rush, and all of a sudden you can see like a lot of traffic. And guys, I had to tell you honestly, sometimes I had to even break fast in the car. I will have a sweet, or I have a drink of water, right? So I have something around me, right? So if I'm stuck in traffic, I'll just have a sweet, and I'll just break my fast, right? So long story short, what I'm trying to say is that a lot of people right now, they are actually going towards the bazaar to actually try to get, their food. So, a quick question to you guys: where's your favorite bazaar? Before we continue, yeah, all over lah, basically lah. So anyway, um, as I was saying lah, about 80% of Malaysians are expected to spend a fair bit more during this particular point in time, right? And a lot of it will be based on fashion and also food, right? And the next question is, okay, we understand food. This is where people have to spend their money on they go to the bazaar and they have to spend a little bit more. On top of that, let us not forget that even hotels will have buka puasa spread. And guys, I have to tell you, certain places they can go as low as maybe 30 to 40 ringgit, and they can go as high as 270 ringgit. Let that sink in. 270 ringgit, right? So if it's a hotel, sometimes they have plus, right? Could be about 300 ringgit. And if they go with a family of four, that's about 1,200 for just one meal. Can you imagine that? So I think this time of the year is very profitable for a lot of F&B producers lah, or F&B people working in the F&B, right? And that's one of the reasons why a lot of you can see a lot of bazaars right now, and you can see a lot of new shops, right? And these guys, what they do is they may have a full-time job, but they will take 1 month off where they will maybe just do a side hustle, have a small little garage, and if their food is a hit, right? This is where I heard lah, urban legend says that some people can actually make about 10,000 just in 1 month, right? So the next question right now is that, since we are a financial channel, how are we going to benefit, or what stocks can we buy with regards to the Ramadan season, right? What stocks or what companies are going to do well, right? So I think basically lah, I'll tell you how I actually search for stocks, right? And I'm going to share with you this particular method lah. So every time when I go to a bazaar, right, I look at two things, right? Number one, I look at how long the lines are. Number two, I look at the quality of food lah, and I notice one particular thing. And I'm also a foodie, so every time when I go to makan, I always would try to find the places where there's a long line. And as silly as it may sound, lah, I tend to actually go to places where there are long lines, basically, right? And I just go and try their food, lah, right? But one thing which I noticed is number one, amongst the popular food this year, right, are things like murtabak, things like roti john, are things like chicken wings, are things like ayam golek, are things like ayam percik, and that's the first thing I noticed. And the second thing I noticed is that when you see another thing that goes well with a main meal are also the kueh mueh, right? Kueh mueh is things like we in Malaysia, these are little sweet snacks lah, right? And after kueh mueh, there's also drinks. So these are the three main components which I see being sold in the Bazaar Ramadan, right? And I ask myself right now, this is interesting information. How me as a person that wants to invest in stocks can make some money from this, right? So when I was looking at all sorts of this food, right, I noticed one thing being sold over and over and over again, and this is such a popular protein, right? Which is chicken lah. Basically, everything is chicken. Ayam percik, ayam masak merah, ayam rendang, everything ayam, 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 ayam. So now I was thinking to myself, right, if people are going to spend more during this particular month, on top of that, if the demand of chicken is going to increase, and the second thing is that if the price ceilings are going to be taken away from chicken, what's going to happen is that chicken manufacturers may benefit from this particular trend, right? So I think you guys can see that I've been talking about this stock for a couple of times, right? Let me just show you guys this stock, right? I'm going to bring you to the PC. So this is one of the stocks which I'm looking at. It's CCK. You will notice that it was about 71 cents, and right now it's about 1 ringgit. And this stock actually rose by 47% in just 1 year, right? And I've been talking about this stock many, many, many times. Aside from that, I noticed that another poultry player, which I noticed that I guess would benefit from this particular trend, are also the egg people, right? If you think about it, things like roti canai, roti john, even your nasi goreng, I noticed that eggs is a very popular item being used in a lot of cooking, right? And if you look at egg players, right, this guy, Lei Hong, is one of the egg players, and we can see that it actually rose by 29% in 1 year. Aside from that, there is another player, as I mentioned, when we go to drinks and we go and buy the kueh mueh, right? The one raw material which they use over and over again is basically sugar. Okay, this one, I look at this and I'm like, wow, Adnan, I missed out on this opportunity. This stock actually rose by about, let me show it to you guys, 267%. It's MSM Malaysia, and you can see that at one time it's 81 cents and right now it's $3. So bringing back. So basically, all in all, that's a little bit about how I pick stocks, right? Number one, you don't really, I'll tell you the honest truth now. You don't have to look at a bunch of charts. You don't have to look at the trends, the analysis. I listen to people sometimes talk, and it's like, what are they saying? It doesn't even make sense in my head, right? For me, I'm an equity analyst, and I always stand with this particular point. Every time when we invest, we are basically when we buy a stock, we are basically a small shareholder, and we own a share in that company. We basically have to look at it as a business, right? And if the business does well, or if the business is expected to do well, what tends to happen is the stock price tends to adjust accordingly, right? So that's the first thing I always remind myself, right? And I'm going to share with you guys. Every time have a mindset that we are going to be prospective business owners and what business are going to benefit.